Bye! My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to another episode of Duck Dogs, everybody. I'm your host, Josh Miller. And before we get going, let's make sure we thank our wonderful partners that make this show possible. So thank you to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend of food that I have my dogs on, and the food that will fuel them here throughout the hunting season. It's a great high-quality food that we have seen a drastic increase in energy, in recovery time. Teeth and coat are fantastic. Everything that we're looking for in a high-quality premium food. That blend of food has been fantastic for us. So www.eukanuba.com. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and the large size, and now also in the medium size. So no matter how big or small your hunting partner is, you can be sure that they are traveling as safe as they possibly can. www.luckyduck.com. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear is your go-to option for outdoor clothing. We've talked about during the hunting season, during the training season. But now as we head in the hunting season, make sure that you get all the gear that you need to stay out in the field more comfortably for longer. www.sitkagear.com. Also, thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs for your four-legged hunting partner. So whether you're needing a stand, a board, or whatever you're needing to hit the field to make sure that your hunts are as successful as possible, make sure to get over to Gun Dog Supply and pick up the gear that you need. www.gundogsupply.com. Also, thank you to Kent Cartridge. Kent is our shotgun shell of choice as we hit the field. I love that Kent Bismuth personally, and that's what I shot all last week in North Dakota, and it's what I'll be shooting all weekend or all season long. So www.kentcartridge.com. Also, thank you to Retriever Roadmap. You're going to hear us talk about Retriever Roadmap a little bit here in this episode, as we have some live members on here today. For anyone that's looking to train your own dog at home, we have a fantastic community, training options or training groups available for you to join to be able to get actual in-the-field experience with other members, with other dogs, and on-the-fly guidance, and then a video-based library to make sure that you're successful with your training at home. www.retrieverroadmap.com. Last but not least, thank you to our newest sponsor, Gun Dog Grind. Gun Dog Grind is our coffee of choice here. I don't know if you could tell.
That was dramatic.
That was me sipping.
Wow.
That was me sipping the coffee. It's fantastic. www.gundoggrind.com. All right, everybody. So we have a couple of things going on here today. So first off, we have Eric Shuddy with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. And if you don't know Eric is the manager at the kennel, and so he basically makes sure that everybody stays on task and is running smoothly, and all the clients are happy. And he had the opportunity to come in and speak with me today for a couple of reasons. One is because I was out in North Dakota for opener. Basically, right when I came back, you went out, and so we have some kind of hunting situations that I think are going to be really cool to talk through. And then we're also doing this thing where the Retriever Roadmap community, we're doing this live to where members can send in any questions that they would have. And we can kind of have, I think, some more meat on the bone here as we talk about just this first part of the season. And why I think this is so impactful is because this first part of the season, I feel like, is when there's a lot of panicking going on. And the reason I say there's a lot of panicking is because you work all spring and summer long, especially if you have a young dog or specifically a first-year dog going into the field. And very rarely does it all pan out the way that you're wanting it to. And so I want to talk through some different scenarios, some different situations, and one, let's shed some light on maybe the why, behind, either the way that I handled a situation, the way that you handled a situation, but some of the questions that I think we already have, and I'm sure that we'll get, I think there's a lot of value there in what we can do as handlers to better set our dogs up for success. And so I wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit. But before we do that, so tell me a little bit about your experience in North Dakota. So how overall was your hunt?
So our hunt was pretty good. I came the week or weekend after, and I believe you were dealing with 80 degree weather.
I was opening week. We had, I think it was 90 one day, but then we also had a day that was like 55.
So we had in the 60s. I know one morning it got into the 40s, so it makes it a little bit more comfortable. My group does a lot of water hunting. I'm not saying we don't do fields, but we get into some backwaters. We load up with the boats.
You guys are guppies.
Yeah, that's what they say. We go way back.
And that's what we call guys that are paddling out in the slough. You guys are guppies, mud guppies.
So that's kind of the bulk of our hunting on this trip. The second time we go, we'll probably be more in the field. As the area we're at, a lot of the fields were not cut yet. The beans just came out, I think, the one day we left. I did get out into a couple field hunts also. But early season like that, it's just a learning curve every time I go out. You're just learning a lot. And we had different factors to deal with from the wind was a big time factor on one of the hunts. So I just learned a lot by watching these birds. I believe we were hunting in the field. It had to have been 30 mile an hour plus winds. So that was a challenge in itself. In terms of birds, we saw plentiful birds. The one morning we got our limit of canvasbacks, which is the most unbelievable bird to eat. I mean,
to eat?
Canvasback? 100%.
Interesting.
You never had one?
Well, I'm a teal guy. I prefer
grief.
it's hard to me. It's hard to beat a teal.
Oh boy. Hopefully somebody listening on, especially you guys watching live, if you had canvasback, support me here, because we just cut them up and put them on the grill, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the challenge is we saw a ton of those, and you only get 2 out there. So we had to be careful. But the pintails, we really got to be careful, because there are so many pintails where the area we were at, and you get 1.
Yeah, that was my favorite text that I got from you. I asked you how the hunt went, and your response was, well, we got a limit of pintails. And I'm like, that's 1 each.
So you got to be careful, like early morning, if you're going to shoot. And then because you get the pintails. But then what happened, and we're trying to get mallards, and some of the mallards were flying with the pintails. But overall, it was a good hunt. In terms of my dogs, I was able to put both dogs into different situations, a younger dog and a more advanced dog. So it was good. Yourself?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'll say that our hunt was certainly above average as far as opening trips that we've taken in the past. I would say we had the single best hunt that I believe we've ever had in North Dakota, just single best hunt. And so when you guys are hunting water, are you guys hunting kind of the same slough in different spots in that slough, and just kind of like, we're going to see what today brings? Or you guys, okay.
So this specific one, we're able to change areas, which we did based on the wind and based on what we learned the previous day.
Sure. And I do think that that's how the majority of people that hunt water, that's how they do it. For me, and I think this is just how I grew up hunting around here in western Wisconsin, I remember, So I had a really good friend named Dylan, and this is all we did in the fall. We would put so many miles on our truck and probably scrape together. Like, we couldn't afford the gas to go scout, and this is all that we did. So I love this scouting process. I have a window mount for my spotting scope, and then I have my binos, and I just love running gravel roads, chasing birds, getting on a feed, and watching it. And I think more so than even getting on the feed is watching what those birds are doing on the ground. You can learn so much about, are these birds content and happy? Are they not? Do they have food? Do they not? Are they if they're being shy, looking at a live spread of birds coming in, well, they're going to probably be pretty decoy shy, right? So like, there's a lot just sitting there watching that you can learn before getting into that field on that hunt. And if we have multiple feeds, that's going to dictate which feed I feel like we're going to be most successful on. Is based on the birds' activities and how they're acting, either on the ground or as they're working to come in. So I love that side of it. If it were up to me, until I got to Arkansas, I would never put on a pair of waders. Like, that's just me. And so it's cool that we have two very different approaches, into how we go hunt in the same area. For us, I think, so we hunted 5 days. It was 5 days, and we hunted 4 of the 5. And I actually think that's really good as far as how we're hunting, because if we don't have a good feed, we're not just going to go hunt. Like, I would rather punt that morning to the next day and spend that morning scouting to get on a really good hunt. And that's just, again, how I would operate on it. And so, generally speaking, if we're on a 6-day hunt, in the past, the thought process is, if we hunt 3 days of those 6 days, that's a good trip. And a lot of that has to do with the time and the scouting, and there's a lot to it. And so for us, hunting 4 out of 5 days, I thought that was fantastic. And every day except one was like, it was okay. I think we shot 12 birds or something like that. But I really want to be on the big hunts. I love the show. You guys got the show, one day. And to me, that's what it's about. Like, the dogs, of course, but from a hunting standpoint, it's very rare that, especially if there's a bigger group. I mean, I'm not even pulling the gun up. I mean, I love the calling. I love, like, one of my favorite parts of that show was the birds were reacting to the calling so well that Kyle, who was sitting next to me, he had said, he's like, man, like every single time you're doing something, these birds are reacting. And it does have to do with the timing. Like, you can't just call to call. Like, the timing of the calling is a big deal. But that's what makes it fun for me, is that it feels like, like you're playing with the puppets, right? And it's like, oh, look, we're going to do this now. And then they respond. So I love that part. And then I love, of course, the dog side of it. But I also, from a dog working standpoint, again, I love the field hunting. Now, I would also say I love the field hunting in Arkansas for this. From a hunting standpoint, I love being in the woods. I love being in the timber. I love standing by a tree. I love the best way I can describe it. I think I've described it this way on this show before, that I think it's the most intimate way of waterfowl hunting, because they're so close to you and you can see them do things. Like, when they're coming through the trees, the way that they're moving their head, the way that they're moving their feet and their butt and the whole thing. I mean, it's mesmerizing. But the dogs are getting like 12-foot retrieves. It's like they jump off the stand, they're right there. So from a dog standpoint, most of the time you don't really need one. Like, yeah, of course you're going to get one that sails, or one that, that's crippled and swimming. And yes, 100% the dog's a big part of that. Or maybe the hole's too deep, water rises. Of course, now you need the dog. But you're not getting these mega blinds, these mega retrieves, because you can't see normally, right? Like, once they get through the hole and a layer or two deep in the woods, like, you can't see them to handle them. So it's a very different feel, where in these fields you can stretch it out. And like Clyde, Clyde had the longest successful blind for me out there, which we figured was probably about 250 yards. So nothing like mega, but Clyde's also 10 years old, and I loved watching every second of that. And so, but you're not getting a 250-yard blind retrieve in the woods is kind of what I'm saying. So as much as I love it from a dog standpoint, again, I just love being in the field because you can stretch it out and do that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I thought it was great. I thought there was some very interesting situations that we had come up that I like to talk about in here. But yeah, I think overall it was a great trip.
Yeah, we get into the water we hunt. The difficulty comes into the cripples because we're rowing in about 6-7 feet of water. So when they go down and they dive, they're moving, and sometimes they don't pop up. So that became difficult. And then the one day we hunted in the water, the wind was so bad. As soon as that duck hit the ground or the water, it was floating away fast. And that's where my advanced dog came into play. I was able to play the game. I was running both dogs at the same time, which is a challenge, but I prepared for this. That was my goal. Simplistic ones went to my 15-month-old Phoenix. The more advanced ones, Scout had to clean it up for us. And we were proud of the fact that we really didn't lose too many birds.
Scout's 4?
3.
3.
Yeah,
okay.
so she's still young, but her marking ability was off the charts better than I've ever seen it. Because the one day, as soon as that bird hit the water, I didn't even have to check to see if she marked it, but I knew it was going to be blowing away real fast. I had to send her right away, and I was calling her name so she'd get out there. And it was hard to swim. It was really hard that one day, but so
you were sending her right after the splash because that current was taking it away. So let me ask you this.
Yes.
Have you trained with her since coming? You've only been back for 2 days, so have you trained with her since coming back?
So I did yesterday. Session.
Have you seen any breaking issues or her on her toenails more?
No, because that wasn't every retrieve with her.
Got it.
She did a great job of honoring Phoenix, the 15-month-old. I mean, I didn't have one break on me this whole trip, so it really wasn't a concern of mine. But with Scout, as you know, when I send her like that fast, she's going to take it as I'm going to go every time, too. So I haven't had to do too much recourse on that one.
Yeah, well, and this is to me where, and we all just have to understand this, but we talk about how hunting unravels training season, and it is just going to. Now, to what degree, I think plays a role into the dog, into the situations, and into how the handler is going to handle those situations. With that being said, I also believe that you can't avoid that hunting is going to change your approach on how you like this. Like
I had to.
Yeah, you had to.
I
right?
had no question.
That's right. Had to. Because of the situation that you were in, you had to do something that you wouldn't normally do in training, right? And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're reading the situation, and then hey, because I had to quick send due to the situation, my next training session, or maybe my next hunt rather, I'm going to make her sit there for 15, 20, 30 seconds before sending, so this doesn't become a thing, right? Because they pick up pretty quickly on these new environments. So one thing that you had mentioned that I thought was really interesting was you had sent me a text about you probably, if you need me to refresh your memory, I'm not going to jump ahead of it and let you talk about it, but you said this is the best situation for a young dog.
Yeah.
And I have a situation that I had that I want to talk through about a young dog situation that I used to make a dog successful. But I'd like to hear your situation of this was your ideal young dog setup and what you did for Phoenix.
So leading up to this whole situation, my ultimate goal was to hunt these two dogs together. So this would be 3 or 4 times I've taken Scout, the 3-year-old, and Phoenix out at the same time. But the foundation work had to be solid there, so I knew I could do this. Because going out in a boat and putting both dogs and putting the gear in and going out and set up is not easy. So they have hunted together, and what I learned was Phoenix was learning from that. I give her some easy ones. Scout was doing the hard ones. This is deep water. So the specific situation I did is one of the last days we were there, we had water in a cornfield, maybe a foot. Now I don't need scouts not coming on this because we're going to drop most of these there. So to me now it's just Phoenix and I didn't even shoot that day. I think we ended up with 6, 7 teals in our group. But the marks were easy. I knew the birds weren't going to swim away. She was able to steady, see the marks, and plus I was able to get her on some cripples there too, which was fantastic because the bird's not going to go. Can't go. And I learned this 2 years ago with Scout when we went to Arkansas and we hunted. I don't know if you remember this. We had numerous cripples. And watching the dog learn, and Scout at that time was young too, watching these cripples, at the end of the day, the dog was learning to watch the waves in the water and figure out where it is. So to me, with Phoenix, that was a great day just to take her out. It's just you and I, no Scout. I'm not worried about losing the birds. There was a couple. We landed one on the other side of the water, and I knew this was going to happen. All the rewards were right in the decoys, you know. And she saw the mark, but she got caught up in the rewards area in the decoys. And I knew it was on the other side. I wasn't able to push her through. I ended up just, we didn't have any birds. We just set up the hunt. We had a young kid with me. I say, can you go out there and grab that bird on the other side and just throw it up for me? I just set it up, and then I pushed her through. So that's where I meant by that. And I think I posted one with us shooting and a bird hitting the water and seeing the splash. And you know this, we were hunting a lot into the sun. It was extremely difficult.
Yeah, those west winds are killing us.
So our eyes are in the sun. So to see that thing splash and go get it, I mean, I was very happy how that played out. So that was my version of the best scenario with a young dog. Water, field, it's just a little bit easier.
For sure.
And it's about confidence at the end.
I think it was great that you identified that was going to be a Phoenix success hunt and left Scout at home. I think that's something that is very difficult at times. Anytime you have multiple dogs ever, it's always the worst part of the whole thing is leaving one at home. I mean, that's the most difficult part that I have is, for me on these trips, okay, who do I leave home? And then once I'm there, of the dogs I have, who do I get to hunt? Because I want to hunt all of them for different reasons about all the time. And so for you, I think that was a great, observation and then implementation of let's make this. So the point that you'd said about dogs getting stuck in the decoys, I think that's a thing that a lot of people really do struggle with. And it's the reason of just what you said. I mean, that young dog is starting to understand the game and is starting to learn, okay, what happens where, how does it happen, how do I be successful? Well, the reality is most of the time that reward is going to be in or around those decoys because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to bring those birds in range into those decoys, have that shot, that success, and that's where the reward is. So from a handler standpoint, you need to understand that point of view from your young dog, specifically young dog. Don't get frustrated and upset with them because, well, you saw this go down. Why are you start hunting the decoys? Because if you flip this into a humanized, standpoint, is if we brought you out into a place you didn't know, but then every time you went in those decoys, you'd find $100 bill. Well, you'd be out there and want to suck right back into that decoy spray because every time I've been out here, there's been a $100 bill here. So I'm sure there's another one. I got to find it. So it is something I think you handle it exactly how you'd want to handle it, right? Have somebody go out there, do a training session alive in the moment, in the field training session, and work through it. There's no better way to try to get over a situational issue than when you're in the situation. And I get it. Like sometimes you're with a guy or with a buddy that doesn't want to press pause on the hunt to get through that. But as the dog handler, as the dog owner in this case, you need to be the one to step up and say, hey, I need to do this for my dog to get over this. And we're going to do this 3, 4, 5 times, build that confidence so that next time she does have the confidence to push through. She doesn't think she has to suck into those decoys. And again, this is where training is so different than hunting. Like training, we can train and have where everything is past the decoys, or everything is through the decoys, or everything is, or hey, we're going to run, these doubles, and the first one is going to be in and the second one's going to be out. Well, when you're on these hunts, and it just so happens that the shooting, it's the first 10, 12, 15, 20 birds are all in those decoys, you don't have the control. That's why I always say hunting is uncontrolled. You can't set it up, right? Like it's going to happen how it happens. You as the owner just has to understand what is going on here and what do I have to do to keep things, rolling in a positive direction with my young dog. So one thing that we did, so we had a friend of ours named Kyle, and Kyle has a young dog named Pip. How old? Last time I guessed an age, apparently I was way off and got ridiculed for it.
Pip's over 1.
She's got to be right around that 12-month mark, would you say?
No, she's older than that.
Older than that? But
she's probably about 17 months.
But first season.
First season. Oh, for sure, first season. Right.
So, young dog, first season, and she's going into the first trip that she's ever had. And so she goes out there, and we brought her on one hunt. And it was intentional, the hunt that she went on. And I want to talk through my thought process on this. So, for young dogs in that first hunt or first couple hunts, I really love afternoon hunts. I think it just takes a lot of variables off the table. This is going to feel more like a training session when you go out, rather than if, well, shoot, we don't train at 3:30 in the morning. What are we doing today? We don't get in a boat. We don't drive out in the field. Like for us, we drive out in the field. I like to turn the turtle box on, have some noise, have some music going, can have fun. We're out there to have fun. Let's have some fun. But that's all energy that you're putting into that dog going, what is going on here, right? And then I think the one that really gets people is the dog's in the blind, in the pit, on the stand, however you're hunting. And generally speaking, with ducks, those first groups that come in, or those first birds that come in that you shoot at, it's very low light. It's legal, but it's low light. And I don't think those young dogs see a lot of it. So that's where a dog can get overwhelmed, or a dog can start, looking in the blind, being like, what is going on here? They don't see it, right? Because they can't. Well, in an afternoon hunt, one is going to feel way more like a training session. So let's keep the anxiousness level as down as possible. We can be a little more intentional with, hey, we're going to bring a bumper. We're going to do some work. It's harder to do that in the dark, right? And then 3, if birds do work, it's usually plain as day. They can see it. They understand it. It's just easier. And I know I have been on some slammer afternoon hunts. In my experience, the afternoon hunts tend to be a little slower, or a little more of a trickle. Again, much better situation for a young dog than mental overload. We both dealt with mega spins of pintails, which I think is great for a young dog, right? There is no way to train for 50, 80, 150 pintails that are, and you're either limited out on pintails or you're too close to want to pull the trigger, to potentially going over, right? And it's just spin, 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 sit down, spin, 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 sit down, spin, 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 and that dog just has to sit there and watch. I mean, it is fantastic training. It really is. But again, from an afternoon standpoint, they can see the whole thing. And I just think that there's a big advantage to that afternoon hunt.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Circling back to the trainers, us as hunters now, one of the things, for those who don't know, I coach high school basketball, so I deal with a lot of athletes. So learning how to deal with mistakes, and I preach this to my players, and it also resonates to us too, is first of all, you got to recognize the mistake, and you got to admit to it. Some people have a hard time doing it, and then learn from it. But then you got to forget about it. Sometimes we get emotionally wrapped up with a mistake, and it wrecks your whole hunt, wrecks your whole day. You just have to kind of move on. And I'm seeing a lot of that more in people we deal with clients, whether it's your Roadmap members. They're recognizing their mistakes, and they're putting it on themselves. And but there's still that emotion because we want our dogs to do well. We're hunting in front of our buddies, you know. It's but enjoy the moments and try to find little things that the dog is doing well. You know, so that's something that came to mind. You also said something about reenacting stuff while you're hunting.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation last night. I know Craig listens. He was having issues with blinds. So we worked something through last night, and I said, hey, do this in the field when you got a lull. You got your honey bunnies with you. Exactly what we just created here. Do this.
Did you just say honey bunnies?
Hunting buddies.
I was going to say, what are we doing here?
Good grief. Pretty good. Reenact this with your hunting buddies. Is that better?
Hunting buddies,
Okay.
yes.
And do it there. And I don't think we
Honey Bunny, that is going to be a nickname that sticks with you.
I've got a bunch of nicknames here. You guys are going to enjoy this show. So, anyway, that's what came to mind there.
Yeah. So, I do agree because there has to be ownership on your part, right? There really does. And you can make every excuse in the book, right? Like every bird just went right in the decoys. Like, I can't help that. Okay. You can't help that, but you can do something to combat it in that moment, like press pause and do a training session to help not be an issue. To me, there's too, like, we're seeing more and more, I really believe, of people owning it, of people understanding, situation, owning the situation. And then when you own it, you can go and you can combat it and get over it and go make progress, right? Like this whole poor me thing, like, oh, like this happened on a hunt, like now I have this issue, and like, no, like own it, get over it. And I really think, like you talked about your hunting buddies.
Thank you.
Hunting buddies. I think that's a big part of this. You hunt with the right people. It's going to hold you to a higher standard where you're going to do more of this, right? It's like if you and I, if we say, hey, 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're going to the gym, right? Well, you're going to be there mainly to not let me down, right? If I'm not going and you just, hey, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m., right? You are way more apt to be okay with letting you down, hitting snooze, not making it that day. Oh, we'll do it tomorrow, right? The right hunting group can hold you to that high standard. The wrong hunting group can do the exact opposite. So I think a lot of this is reflect on who you surround yourself with, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you could say that about business, you could say that about life, you could say this about a lot of areas. But I think who you surround yourself with, you have, I know for a fact, very good people around you in your hunting party that will understand, that will not only understand, but encourage you to do those types of things.
Yeah, that happened. Because the one hunt I was talking about, Phoenix, with that field with the water, one of my buddies, I'll just say Brandon, he understood what I was trying to do, and we got a lull there. He says, okay, go. I was going to reenact something because I didn't like the way it worked. Yep. Somebody's listening right now on this podcast, I'm not going to say the name, that did not have a good experience this last week. I talked to him on the phone.
Okay.
That ruined the whole thing.
So what was, without saying name,
Yeah,
I feel like you have a little bit of a free
Yeah.
pass here. So what are we talking about in that situation?
Okay, so when you brought this up, situation was we have a client of ours who has a really good dog. When hunting, my understanding was hunting with a friend who had property, and that friend brought his dog, and that dog was out of control. And it completely ruined the hunt for him personally and the dog itself. It didn't get as many retrieves, and it just turned into a situation that was not fun for him.
So since I don't know the person, are we talking a young dog?
About 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So young, yeah.
It's it's ready to
Not
go.
first season, but young. Okay.
But what he prepared for was not part of this hunt, because that was not a part of his buddy's hunt with his dog. So put it in a bad situation, and the friend didn't seem to recognize the situation.
Yeah, and they never do.
No.
It's just, and that's the hard part, right? Like when you put in, so anyone listening to this, anybody Retriever Roadmap member, we are the ones that are putting in that time with the dog, right? We are the ones that are proud of it. We are the ones that, I would say, most everybody listening to this right now, I'm sure would likely be in the boat that if you didn't have the dog, you'd probably not even care to go out. When I have a photo of Easton around here somewhere. When I lost Easton, I didn't hunt for 2 seasons. I mean, I hunt 90 to 100 days a year, and I just didn't hunt for 2 seasons. I just didn't have, I had no desire. Now, I didn't have the group of dogs that I have now to now when I inevitably lose these really special dogs who are getting old, like Brock and Clyde and these guys, I'm still going to have these young guys looking at me going like that will give me motivation to continue to go out. But in that time, I didn't have that. And so I lost all desire to even go. And so I think everybody here, you are the person that you're putting in this time, right? But if somebody else is going with you that is not putting in that time, it's just, there's going to be that sort of conflict about every time. And it could be everything from a dog not being steady, a dog being vocal, a dog, like all these bad habits are, pick upable from your dog. And I know it's not fun. And I know nobody wants to do this because you've put in all this time. It's not fair, right? You put in all this time. Your dog is under control. Your dog, but you got to be able to pull the plug and say, my dog's going in the truck.
Yeah.
And they've done nothing wrong. And I know it's hard, but it's, to me, so many things can come up between a bad habit getting picked up, between anytime I think of an out of control dog in like the things that I have, like outside of, I'm just thinking dog to dog, like outside of like guns getting knocked over in the blind and people getting knocked over and things that just from a safety standpoint should not happen. But like I'm talking like you get a competitive steady dog that the dog is other dog is break. At some point, sometimes that dog's gonna go, I've had enough of this. I have seen more dog fights happen because of this, because the dog's out of control, runs over maybe the dog in the other blind, gets in their face, tries, like they're just out of control dogs. It's just not going to bode well for any situation. So, but this is, to me, this is the unfortunate part of being the responsible dog owner. Sometimes you just got to put them away. I've done that a lot where it irks me to no end because this isn't my fault. This isn't my dog's fault, but I'm going to do this for the betterment of my dog. But a lot of times I think you had said that the buddy had the property. Yeah. I mean, that's the killer.
I think that's
right
what
there.
He said. He was in a tough spot.
Yeah. I mean, if this is your hunt, like, I'm telling pack it up, buddy. But if it's their property or their spot, or that makes it more tough.
And I have a patient level. Everybody who I hunt with has dogs, but they have an understanding of what the dog needs to be. And if their dog isn't to that level, I'm very patient with that, and I'll actually work with them on it. Because they recognize if there's mistakes. Mine's going to make mistakes too. But to have a complete not understanding that your dog is just wrecking the hunt, I'm not a part of that.
Yeah.
But I also don't expect everybody's dog to be perfect either. But when you hunt in our group, that's understand we're going to have good dogs and we're going to work with them and have patience with it and help you, and find myself helping them through it a little bit more. So it's fun for me too.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in because most of the time, okay, so Travis, our buddy that we hunt with out in, did he tell you about the dog?
I know where you're going with this because he was lost for words on what to do in this situation.
Yeah, so his situation was a little different because this is an employee of his.
Yeah.
And so he invites the employee out. His employee wants to bring the dog, and the dog's out of control, right? From what I understand, very vocal, breaking all the time, like running out before the shots are even being had, and flaring a lot of birds because of it, right? Like, so he's very frustrated with it because, and this is what happens, right? Everybody else in the hunting party have sent him messages saying, I am not going again if that dog is there. And so he's like, I'm just in this bad spot because, like, he's an employee of mine. Like, I can't tell him he can't come, but then everybody else doesn't want to come because of the dog. And so they've addressed it with the guy, and he does not understand what his dog is doing wrong. Like, sometimes you just got to rip the Band-Aid off and get a new group of people.
Yeah, he's in a tough spot because he explained it to me too. And yeah, he is in a tough spot.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to move on to a situation that I had. So Boris is my youngest boy, and Boris he's got everything, man. He's mega motor. Like you want to talk about running a line. I mean, this dude will run a line as long and as far as you ask him to go, and he's just hard charging the whole time. He's very team player. Like, I blow a whistle, boom, he's right there. He pops around wanting the cast. He and I have had to work through some issues recently, and it was really interesting. So Lewis, our friend from overseas that comes over for the Retrieve Roadmap Strike Force, which is our big event that we put on, invite all the members, everybody can come. We train dogs, we have good food, it's a great camaraderie. Well, Lewis had Boris before I did. So when he came over, he's like, hey, would you mind if I use Boris? He's kind of like an example, a demonstration dog. And so for probably a week, Boris handled with Lewis. And for whatever reason, when Lewis left coming back to me, like, this dog's mind was kind of blown a little bit. Like, all of a sudden he's like not understanding what I'm asking because Lewis is using different verbiage, different words, different everything. It was a rough situation I had to work through, but I feel like I've worked through it pretty well. So I feel really good about Boris. And so he was out in North Dakota on his first ever hunt. He had hunted once with me before in Arkansas, which was just a little water setup. But otherwise, he just sat and watched last season. And so this was his first season to actually go out. So he's on his first live hunt. And he had, now this is a dog that, especially if you're a Retrieve Roadmap member listening, if you have been to any of the strike teams that I have, the strike team trainings that I have run Boris, you know how impressive he is. He's a really, really nice dog. But this is still his first hunt. And so although I know what he's capable of, I'm also trying to keep into consideration that this is a new environment. This is a new situation. This is new, a lot of new for him. So his first two blinds that he ran, the first one was there was a pintail that he shot into this group of birds. I think 2 or 3 fell. Birds kept flying, and I watched one fall. Now this bird, it was up over this hill a little bit, but I felt really confident that I knew about where it was. So I walked him up on top of the hill so that he could see me on this blind, and I sent him on the blind, got him in that area, cast him back and forth a few times, but it was pretty obvious I didn't actually know where it was. I felt good about it, and I thought, we had enough, wind. I was like, he'll scent this thing if I get him close, and we were unsuccessful. And I didn't spend a ton of time on it because we had more birds working. It was kind of that kind of hot part of the day. As far as hot, I mean, I don't mean heat hot. I mean like action hot. So I got him back in, got back in the blind, kept hunting. We did go pick that bird up later, and it was actually much closer than I thought it was. And so that was handler error on my part, putting him too far. So then the second blind that he had, we shot into another group, and we pick up all the marks, and the guy from the other side of the blind was like, hey, there were 3 that dropped in that group too. He said, there's a 4th one that's off here on the left. And I even said, I was like, you sure I only saw 3 fall? He's like, 100%, there's one right there. I know right where it is. I'm like, okay. So I bring Boris over, line him up, back, put him back there. And he's directing me the whole time. Little right, boom. Little back, boom. Right, it's right there, boom. Like, I'm back and forth, hunt, hunt whistle, hunt that area, stop, put him back. Like, he did everything great, but you could tell like he's unsuccessful, and he's like starting to look around, like his body language is starting to tell me he's a little not frantic, but you can just tell like he's not his normal confident like fluid self. So I call him back in. Well, we walk out there, and there wasn't a bird. I went back in the video. There was no bird. So now here's where I'm at. I have a young dog that I think is a superstar in the making, that I know is capable of all this stuff, but now he's 0 for 2. And I just watch his body language just change a little bit. Not drastic, but it was a little bit, enough to make me know something's up. Like either he's not trusting me, he's not trusting himself, he's wondering why am I not being successful. There's something there. Now, go back to what we talked about at the beginning of this, right? This is where hunting is not training. In a training setup, we have a marker, we have a flag, we have somebody else. We know where there is a reward 100% every single time, right? We don't have that in hunting, mainly because of two of the situations I just talked about. So my approach on that was I am not sending him on a third unless I 100% know, one, that there's a bird there, but then two, where that bird is. And we did. Now there was, Clyde running that 250-yard blind. I would have loved to send Boris on that, but I knew about where it was, not exactly. And I just wasn't willing to gamble again, because what happens then? If he's 0 for 3, I do think he's going to start guessing. I think maybe he's going to start blowing off some whistles. I think maybe he's not going to trust me as much, right? So as a handler, I'm like, look, from a situational standpoint, I just don't love this. So I have my older boy out there. So the idea with this was quite frankly, I don't love running multiple dogs, mainly because when I bring them out, I like it to be about them, right? I really do. But in this case, Clyde is 10. These big hunts especially, he's getting a little sore, not a little, a lot sore after some of these big hunts. And it gives Boris an opportunity, because this dog is an absolute fire breather. It gives him an opportunity to, hey, you have to honor some of this too. Like, don't get on your toenails thinking everything's for you, right? You have to honor. There's a back and forth. You're only going where I'm telling you to go. So it was a win-win for me having both of them there. But then in this case, I could still run Clyde, which he ran a beautiful blind on this bird. But I just wasn't willing to gamble with my young dog. He just went 0 for 2 for. So there was an opportunity later on in the hunt where it was only a 50-yard blind or so, but I knew he didn't see it because it landed behind us. And so I just turned around. I knew I could even see the little bit. We were in a wheat stubble field, and I was able to put him on that very quickly, have success, and that was the last blind that he ran. But I bring it up because this, again, is hunting, right? These uncontrolled, these variable situations are going to come up, and it's how you handle it. If you keep running blind after blind after blind after blind, it's unsuccessful, and then the dog starts doing things, you have to understand why the dog is doing that, right? Like if you're my coach and you've put me in situation after situation after situation to fail, and I have failed, I'm going to start trying to figure out how to do something right. Right? Most of these dogs, they want to do it right. They know what right and wrong is. I promise you, when I called him back both of those times and he didn't have a bird in his mouth, he was looking the whole way back like, is there something I can grab? Is there something I can pick up? Like, I want to do this right. So I know that he was feeling that. I wasn't going to let him feel it again. And so from a handler standpoint, these are types of things to think about in that moment.
Yeah, you did a good job of recognizing that. Going back to this field hunt with Phoenix, we had some birds she didn't mark very well. She's not advanced trained yet to really be good on blinds, but I can get her to sit and I can get her to hand cast. I would send her. I know our lines are straight on back, but when she was, I didn't want to get so many whistles going. I said, I'm done. Bring her back. I'm going to send back on that line. I kept sending back on that line, knowing that she'd get in the area, and I was trying to do it with one whistle only. I didn't want to do multiple whistles because I didn't want to get poppy, and I learned that from the first dog.
This is you knowing your dog, too.
Yes.
That's a big part of it.
And I just pulled the plug. If she was not doing it right away, we're going to pull the plug, bring you back. I'll get you there because I know you can run a straight line. So that scenario did come up because we needed a reward there, and we were just in the beginning stages of her training. And so you got to be able to recognize that and know your dog, what they can do.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So actually, this next one is exactly what we're just talking about. Blowing off whistle sits on a hunt. So that topic has come up, I would say, over 10 times in the last week of people, whether this is most of them are social messages, but just like a couple phone calls, maybe with the kennel of people just asking questions. And this is one of those things that, of course, without knowing the dog, you can't ever completely deep dive into, well, here's the issue. But here's the two things I'll say. Hunting brings out weak points in your training. Like when everything is so controlled and so set up, the dogs know that. And then all of a sudden you go into these uncontrolled situations. And when I say uncontrolled, I'm not saying you're hunting out of control, but I'm saying you can no longer control the situation you're going to go run your dog in, at least not totally. And so these things do show up. These are the warts that you're not seeing, but now all of a sudden they're magnified. So I would use this as an opportunity to say, okay, identifying where my weak points are, and it gives you, to me, this is the football setup, right? Like you're playing on Sunday, and your team, or your dog in this case, is showing you what you need to work on for the next week before the next game, right? So focusing on that is one. Two, especially when we start talking young dogs' first seasons, I would say in this situation, like you almost got to expect it.
100%. There's too much going on.
And most of those dogs are running way more majority marks.
Oh, 100%.
Probably 9 out of 10 are marks, right? So what happens? They're using their eyes. They're seeing these birds go down. They're sucking into the decoys where the success has been. And all of a sudden, that dog starts kind of reverting back to that first season stuff of like, well, I remember. This is why you always talk about redshirting, right? This is one of the reasons why I don't hunt my dogs that first season. I want them to have a full season of just sitting and watching. But then the other side is, to me, when you bring a dog out hunting that is not finished, that is not, and we still have to come up with a better word than finished, because I hate that term, because we're never finished. But for terminology that everybody can understand, okay, you need to understand and accept the consequences that come from that season, right? So, in my opinion, this is one of those consequences. When you bring them out and for a full season, you don't know how, the dog doesn't know how to run blinds. So, all it does is mark. So, for a full season, it's mark. Use my eyes. Like, yeah, of course, come season 2, and you're like, all right, we can run blinds now. And it's mark. Oh, okay, here's my blind opportunity. And they go out and they suck in the decoys and they blow off your whistle and they're hunt right where the last bird was. Like, you gotta expect it.
Yeah, I challenge people to, when you're hunting, to figure out what went wrong and try to fix that week. And don't try to get so far ahead of yourself. You know, we do these strike team sessions once a week. For those who don't know, with Retriever Roadmap members, as part of the package deal, or especially in our area, we run a session in the evening. So my first question, everybody, was, those who are hunting, what do you want to work? What did not go well? And let's just work on that. And last night, one of them blew off my whistle in the water, and that was Craig. I said before, we worked through that. But you have to be able to do that. And I do this constantly here, getting into sports here. I got a 26-game season. We play on Tuesday, okay? Then I play Friday. I've got really 2 days to get ready. And when we meet the boys on Wednesday after Tuesday's game, these are the 3 things we did not do well. We didn't do this pick and roll well. It's not skill stuff. This is what we're focusing on for the next game. And my goal is to get ready for game number 27, which is the playoffs. In hunting scenario, you're looking at a young dog as a season. To me, that's a game 1 season. You're looking for season 2, 3, 4 to really crush it. But you got to go real slow and fix those little things. And how many of us do this during the hunting season? I think when I was younger, I just hunt and wasn't training during the week. But what a great opportunity to fix things.
Do you believe in that power of 3?
Say it.
So, like, I've been told a lot that your brain can't comprehend more than like 3 tasks at a time.
Yes.
So like for you, like is that an intentional number? Those three, like when you're like three things.
You have to keep it simplistic, yeah.
Yeah.
But technology today, I'm going in sports here again. I get done with a game. If we had 10 turnovers, I can hit this button. It shows us all 10 turnovers. And that's our one thing, it shows it
That's
to them.
incredible.
It's incredible now. And with things today, everything works so fast with us today. We want to be fast. Everything, I deal with a lot of kids, and we want things to be fast, but we want to slow it down also. But focus on whether three things, one, what are some things that are going to help me get to my goals? And speaking in sports analogy, game 1 is going to be looking a lot different than game 27. I see it play out every season. I mean, we are unbelievable at the end of the season to where we were when we started. And that should be your goal during the hunting season.
For sure. Yeah, so that power of 3 thing, I've used that a lot in my roping.
Yeah.
And I was told this by one of the guys that mentors me is every time you're back in that box, have your 3 things. Have your 3 things that you're thinking about that you wanna accomplish on this run. These 3 things. And I've always heard that power of 3, right? And I think one of the things that was kind of interesting to me, so I totally agree with you, like everything wants to be fast, right? With everything. Dogs, you cannot go fast. You can't rush it. You can't expedite it. You can't, and I want to get back to that, but to finish my side on the roping thing, like when I'd back in that box, I'd always have these 3 things. My 3 things would change all the time, right? So like they changed whether it's like weather, arena you build, what calf I had, like it would always change. And I still think I was overthinking it a lot. And what changed it for me was I was actually listening to a podcast with a guy named Trevor Brazil, and Trevor's an extremely successful roper. And so they talked about this on the podcast. Was like the host, I can't remember what podcast it was, but the host was like, Trevor, everyone always has their 3 things that they have in their head of what they want to go accomplish. Like, what are your 3 things? And his response, and I use this now in my roping, is he said, well, my dad always told me that 3 was too many for my brain to comprehend, so I'm going to do 2. And the 2 that I always do is get out fast, which means get out at the right time to not be behind the calf and have your timing right. So get out fast and don't take anything for granted. And I was like, huh. So what was interesting to me, and this is where perspective then comes in. Okay, so for me, I was looking at don't take anything for granted as in every step. You have to complete every step before you even get to do the next step, right? And I think that applies with their training. And there was one time that I was going into the box and I was like, don't take anything for granted. Yeah, I say this stuff to myself. And my perspective on it was no longer, for whatever reason, this moment, it wasn't each step. It was appreciate being here. Like, don't take for granted that you are here in this moment and having the opportunity to be able to do this. And so, to me, it was that moment this thing started slowing down. It just like, it gave me a very different vibe, a very different, like, I stopped, even when I had those 3 things, I was still trying to go fast doing those 3 things. And that perspective just helped me slow things down. And I think, from a dog standpoint, one, I think, don't take for granted that you are here in this moment, right? Don't take for granted that this dog that you're struggling with is way better than the last dog that you had and is teaching you a lot of things, right? Don't take for granted that this is a young dog and you have the next 14 years ahead of you, right? Don't take for granted that cripple that is out there and is teaching this dog, like, be so thankful for this bird that's doing this, the best teacher you could ask for. I think there's so many things not to take for granted in these moments. But one thing that I do, so the next one I want to go to is expectations on a hunt. And I literally have on my notes here, slow down. Because I think that's what everybody just has to do, is slow down. I think everybody gets on these hunts. It's exciting. Everything wants to go fast. And when you go fast, that's when things go wrong, right? So we need to slow down. But here's something I think I would like to, at the risk of ruffling some feathers or maybe busting some egos, I think it is worth stepping back and just asking this question to yourself. If you are struggling with your dog on hunts, the question I'd like you to ask yourself is, do I really know what I'm doing on a hunt? I would venture to guess more people, quite frankly, they don't know how to hunt. They don't know why I should set up my dog in the situation based on this. Don't know why, ideally, I'm not looking straight into the east because that sun is going to be right in our faces the whole time. I don't know why, like, I could go through a lot of these, but when you only get to do something 3 to 4 times a year, like hunt, like you're not going to naturally be as proficient or be an expert at it like the guy that does it 30 to 40 times a year, right? So our expectations also need to wave with that with our dog, right? So if I'm a coach of 20 plus years, like I'm probably going to be able to give better guidance than my first season coming into this thing, learning like what works and what doesn't work, right? So if you are new, you have to understand that you are also, like, your dog is still looking to you for leadership. So if there's something going wrong, instead of, and this is where I think actually the more seasoned people tend to be the people that are like, oh, like this is on me. Yeah, like this situation wasn't ideal because they've seen it before. What I tend to find is that the newer people, this is their first dog, maybe even this dog got them into hunting, they tend to be the people that panic more of like, this did not go well at all. Like my dog didn't understand what was going on. My dog, and I'm just like, but did you understand? Like you have to be setting this dog up for success. This dog, it doesn't know what this is all about. And if you don't know what it's all about, that's okay too. But let's get you a mentor. Let's get you someone that can help guide you, that can put your dog in a successful situation so you don't have that blow up. So you don't have, I talked to somebody last week. She's a roadmap member, super nice girl. I've talked to her a number of times now about this young dog, and what she was struggling with was that they shot one bird. It was that early kind of light, and the bird got shot. The dog didn't see it go down, and she was like, well, she didn't want to go get it, but she didn't see it go down, right? But they missed every other bird after that. Right. And she, she laughed. She's like, I know, like that's, we need to get better at shooting, but how do we fix that? I'm like, well, I might be like going to the trap range, like it might be, this might not be as much of a dog issue as in if you can be successful in your shooting, you give your dog opportunities. Your dog is not going to get better without the opportunities in front of them to be able to get better, right? Like if I want to go shoot a basketball better and I shoot, once or 2 times in October, once in November, and then not again until the next October, like I'm probably not going to be a great basketball player, right? So, but if during that month of October, I get 100 opportunities or 100 shots, I'm going to be better than if I got 2 shots, right? Like it's that repetition, and it's the opportunity for a dog to understand it, to be able to go be successful, and then be able to build off that success, which is a huge part of that whole thing.
Yeah, preparation is a big thing. I mean, prepare like a champion. I like to use that phrase. You're not preparing like a champion when the season starts.
Right.
I don't care what you're doing.
Right.
I got guys playing football right now. We did our work in the summer. That's where we did our work. I'm going to see these guys and let them enjoy their, and come November here, we're going to go. Training's the same way.
That 100%. That is a big part of this.
It's a huge part of it.
You cannot expect your dog to be successful in October when you haven't put in the work in April, May, June, July, August, September. Like you can't, right? Like if you didn't put in the work, that is on you. It's not the dog's fault.
And you've talked a lot about that. And I think people recognize that.
100%. Yeah.
They just, I don't have time. I don't have this, so that's where your expectations come into play. You got to assess, what did I do? This is the results, and you got to live with the results. You can't get mad about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to take ownership in what you're doing, and, for the most part, people who deal with understand that.
I really do think so, too. Yeah. You want to get to some questions?
Yeah, we got a few here.
That's great.
Let me scroll through a couple. Greg, you asked, what do you do to prepare running 2 dogs at the same time? Because I know you have multiple dogs.
Greg
Sikorsky.
Well, he's got 2
he's got
good dogs.
So I think it just comes down to preparation. I've been preparing this since June with my situation because that's what I want to do. At the end of the day, for me, it comes down to foundation and steadiness. I know I could have went out in the water, put these two dogs on a place board. They're not going to go anywhere. But we've also reenacted as much as I could. What I couldn't reenact is birds flying, birds dropping, going out at night. Those are the things I went into this hunt knowing to do that. But I would have not have taken them out if I did not put the time in and have seen it play out. So that's it's just preparation on that one.
Yeah, one of the things that I think should be considered a lot is more know than go. Most of these dogs have the go. They have the desire. They want to go. They have the motor. And a lot of times, that's what people are worried about. Retrieve, right? Because you're a retriever. I want you to go retrieve. But in that case right there, they're going to go when they see a bird splash in front of them in the water. What you don't know all the time is if they're going to stay there, if they're going to be steady, right? Because if you shoot one bird and both these dogs go, you're going to have two pieces of that bird coming back. I mean, they're just, the control side of it is so important. And I think more than just this, I think sometimes there's a thought of like a training setup has to be an intentional training setup. Got to get the launchers out, got to get the wingers out, got to get all this equipment, got to get all this stuff. That's not the case. You could be cleaning your garage. Both dogs are sitting there on their place boards. You could be at a t-ball game. Both dogs are sitting in their blinds. Like, you can be doing these things to where they understand I'm in here or on here as far as, board or blind, and I do not move until I'm told to. That's the obedience. That's the foundational stuff that you're talking about. And if you have that, your anxiousness level is going to go way down on a hunt, which the dogs are feeding off of, which means this is going to go a lot smoother.
It goes a lot smoother. I just knew I'd have control. I can personally control the rest of the hunt. But if they're under control, we're not going to have any issues. So here's one for you. I'll have to give you, this is Sarah Payne. Tips for new hunters.
It's Pine.
Sorry, Pine. Mrs. Pine.
I call her dad Dr. Payne now because he's a doctor, and I called them the Paynes forever.
So I know she's getting into hunting. Okay. Tips for new hunters, dog handlers. First duck hunt on the opener here tomorrow for her. What do you think?
So first off, Sarah's very unique in this. So this is one of those situations that the dog got her into hunting. I know Dad hunts, and I know that there was obviously the pull there, but Salem got her into hunting. The difference is, and I don't know if this is because of Sarah's horse background or what it's from, but Sarah is so dog centric. Like, she asks the questions that need to be asked. She prepares the way that she needs to be prepared, and she does not have an ego to where she's going to go in acting like she knows something that she doesn't know. And she has put that dog into opportunity after opportunity to be successful. And that's one of the reasons that dog is as good as that dog is. But the question was just about preparing for that first hunt.
Yeah, first-time hunter.
Yeah, and so I think some of the big mistakes that I see on first hunts is, one, from a waterfowl standpoint, we're always looking to hide. And it's hiding that young dog too much to where they can't see. Like, that dog still has to see, right? And now you get with the wrong person, the wrong group of people, and they're like, oh, it's the hide, get the dog in here. Well, if this is about the dog especially, the dog's got to be able to see. I would rather have the dog sit out in the open, especially in that early, first little bit, to where, I mean, let's be real, especially duck hunting, it's not that major of a deal in that low light situation to have the dog sit. I will oftentimes have a young dog sitting outside the blind until the light gets to a point that I know they're picking stuff out. Let the dog be able to see. That's one. Two, oftentimes talking too much. Like the owner talking too much to the dog. We want the dog to look out, right? Look out over the decoys, out over the spread, look in the air, pick the birds out. They can't do that if you continue to talk to them. What are they going to do? They're going to turn and they're going to look at you. Well, that's counterproductive to what we're actually wanting. Like, let the dog look out. we see this a lot. So this is actually something that a good friend of mine, I won't say his name, a good friend of mine that is an outfitter had talked to me about here last week. He has a young dog that the dog keeps looking in at him rather than out in the spread. Now, the dog has since worked through this because he has the opportunity to get on hundreds of birds a day.
Right.
Opportunistic, talk about those situations, opportunities. Obviously, he has that opportunity. But, for him, the difference is that he has to be conducting the hunt. He has to be keeping everyone safe. He has to be calling the shot. He has to be doing all these things, right? So for him, the dog sitting here, he has to be like, hey guys, right here, 11 o'clock, coming in low. Okay, everyone get ready. Doing this. Like, think about that. The dog naturally is going to be like, oh, what are you saying, Dad? What are you doing, Dad? And then the shot call oftentimes is something that will get, especially if you're the one that calls the shot in the group. If you're like, all right, get him, guys, and you're yelling, what's the dog going to do? What, Dad? Right? Again, we're talking young dogs, but this is all stuff to think about. If I'm hunting with a young dog that I know is like, especially wants eye contact, wants to look at me, and is very unsure about, I'm going to have somebody else call the shot. I normally call the shot in our hunting groups. I'm going to have someone else call it, because then I can just focus here and I can just watch here and I can just make sure that I'm seeing all this, right? And then I'm not tempting the dog to take his eyes off of what I really want him to look at and look at me, right? So those are just a couple of little things that I'd say as you head into that first hunt.
You said something interesting. Those who follow me, I think I posted something on Retreat Roadmap with Phoenix. I intentionally took the cover off the Momarsh blind, put her on the stand, and she was out front. I didn't care early season. I needed her to see everything that was going on.
That's right.
Interesting you say, because there's a conversation. I know you guys listen to the podcast, can't see this, but there's some comments and conversations going on about getting the dog too far out for creeping and all that. Remember, it's on place board. I'm not worried about breaking. I needed her to take everything in. So that's, if you got a young dog like that, let him take it in. That was a good comment on that. All right. Let's see here. You see those questions on there at all? You able to scroll?
Yeah, I can. I was being lazy and leaning on you. Let's see here. I can only see a couple of them for some reason.
I think you got to make your screen bigger.
I'm going to lean on you because I'm not a tech person.
Great.
Was that your way of trying to lean on me?
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
This is from Chris. I'm just going to read this. Getting a duck dog ready to pheasant hunt. Now we're in the pheasant hunting.
Yeah.
2.5 year old. 2.5 years old. Named Axel. Duck hunted last year. I got asked to bring him on an annual pheasant trip because not many dogs are going. Axel has one seasoned pass, just to let you know where he's at. We've been working on being steady to the shot with the skeet launcher. I've also been working on quartering during morning walks. Any tips to help us out would be nice, and I know you have some answers on this one between duck hunting and pheasant hunting.
Yeah, so naturally your pheasant hunts are going to be less controlled, naturally, and I know that there's probably some pheasant hunter that out there cusses me for saying that, but it's just the truth. I mean, a waterfall hunt is basically an obedience session until you say their name to release them, and then they get back to you, and then you're back to having an obedience session again. That's control. The thing with upland hunting, and through the pheasant ranch, we do upland hunt a lot, is more times than not, if we're just being honest, it's chaos. It's organized chaos, you'd hope, but it's chaos because you're going to have numerous dogs out. Again, I'm generalizing, right? Like if you're the guy that hunts by yourself or you and your son and you have one dog, it's under control the whole time, I get it. But if you're hunting with 6-7 people and there's 3-4 dogs out there, it is very difficult because if you're doing with was it Chris? Yeah, Chris said that. So like if you're really wanting to work on being, like sit to flush, one, you got to get birds involved. Like that's the only way, because I think it's great. I think you mentioned with a trap thrower, something like that. With a trap thrower,
steady to shot.
That's that. I think that's a very creative way to start that process, but you need to do it with birds. I mean, it's the only way to really do it. But then understand your situation. If you are going to put that time in and put that, like, let's just say you're going to go to the local game farm and buy birds to do this with. Think about that. You're $25 a pop, right? Or $30 a pop, whatever it is. So every 2 or 3 birds, you're dropping $100 bill for training. It can get tough. So if you're going to invest the time and the finances into doing this, I think it's great. But then for me, I would highly suggest don't plan on then hunting your dog with any other dog that is not going to be steady, that is not going to honor, that is not going to sit to flush. We saw this talking about Sarah. Sarah and a bunch of people came to the pheasant ranch, and we actually got a group together. In her group, we picked out, I think, 4 people that all had dogs that were sit to flush, that were steady, that were under control. And I guarantee you it was the most fun that I've ever had on a pheasant hunt ever. It was so under control. It was so enjoyable. There wasn't the screaming and the whistles and the dogs getting shocked because they're not listening. They're like, it was enjoyable. Like, we all sat and laughed. It felt like the pressure was off. The chaos I was out of it. Like, I loved it. I really did. Honest to goodness, and Whitney's going to hate me for saying this because I've pheasant hunted a lot with Whitney, but it was probably in a group setting, I'll say that. That way I win on both sides of the fence here. I love dearly hunting with my wife, and her and I have a fun time, doing that together. But from a group setting, it's the most fun I've ever had with a group. But in that same sense, let's just take Sarah and her little dog, Salem. That little dog was fantastic at sit to flush and being under control, watching, waiting, for her to be released. So if Chris does the same thing, but then when he goes in upland hunts, the other dogs are out there not going to be that, you're going to watch that unravel very, very quickly. And so my thing would be just know that going into it and just understand what do you want to do here, right? Most pheasant hunters that we see, they don't go down that road. And that's a lot of the reason, whether it's the truth or whether it's the reason they use. They don't do the whole, sit to flush, steady through, shot, fall. Like, they don't do it because they hunt with 8 other buddies in South Dakota, or they go to the game farm with their work friends or whatever, and if their dog's under control, all that it means is that they don't get, when I say under control, I mean steady, that they don't get any retrieves, and then it just unravels on them. So it's something to consider. I love when the dogs are. I really do. But it's got to be elite obedience. Yeah, you're thinking that dog's putting up that bird at his nose, and everything about them's going, I got this. Bird flushes, they got to sit, watch that, watch the shot, watch the fall, wait for a name to be called. That's elite obedience. So if you're seeing some of that, I'd really work on the obedience side of it if you're seeing any kind of loose ends there.
Yeah, that's good. I'm also a firm believer now, after seeing it playing out between duck hunting and pheasant hunting. Duck hunt the first couple of years, pheasant hunt. I mean, I saw it play out.
I've had a lot of pheasant hunters not like me for saying that.
I know it, and I'm very sensitive when I always ask a lot of our clients, you duck hunting or pheasant hunting? Give me a percent, and then I try to just nicely explain. You got to understand the pros and cons to this.
Yeah, it's so much easier to loosen the reins up than it is to take this fire-breathing dragon that thinks that life is go, go, go out in front of you and all of a sudden rein it in. Especially, okay, I'm going to go back to Pip for a second. So Pip, if you've been listening to this whole episode, she's the dog that I said was a young dog from her buddy Kyle that brought out to North Dakota that we took her on the afternoon hunt to go make her successful. Okay, that's the dog I'm talking about. That dog sat in that blind for probably an hour. Never would have known she was there. Quiet, calm, under control. Kyle turned and looked at me at one point, and he's like, this right here, I could not be happier with it. No matter what else happens today, this is so awesome. But it's harder to do that with for a dog that is out working, that is out trying to make it happen for themselves, and then all of a sudden, bring them back in, and now now we're going to sit in a blind, and now we have to wait, right? And people are like that too. There's a lot of people that love, from a big game standpoint, love elk hunting, always on the move. Oh, like I've never, unfortunately, up to this point, I've not had the opportunity to elk hunt, but always on the move, go, spot and stalk, all that stuff. And then you bring them out to the Midwest and put them in a tree stand. They're like, this is boring. You're like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. I want to go do something, right? Like people are like it too. A dog is just naturally going to have a harder time understanding that. So that's why I love the obedience. I love the control that's associated with waterfowl hunting. If you're going to do both, let's do that first. Make sure that's solid, really, really solid. And then we can go into that upland field.
I'm going to try to paraphrase this. Danny here put a real long one on in bold letters, says, how do you address blown off commands hunting, which we kind of addressed. But I'm going to scroll down a little bit on his question is, what do you do when they go back and start sniffing decoys, splashing around, kind of doing their own thing, and then blowing off a command? And this is a good one too. I mean, how much pressure do you use? How much pressure do you use on a situation? Do you use a collar, constant pressure to keep them going until they do what you want? There's a lot of stuff right there.
Yeah, there is a lot, because a lot of this does come down to the training side of it, right? So like, if you're going to apply pressure, you need to have used that same pressure in training in low distraction environments so that the dog understands what it is you're asking. If you have not done that, you can't just apply pressure. When I say apply pressure, it sounds like in this case on the collar, and expect that the dog understands what it is that you're asking. If you're seeing that, and again, dog to dog, right? If the dog is, splashing around being a puppy because it's a puppy, that's one thing, right? If the dog is just deciding to do what it is they want to do, like it's hard to imagine for me, like a very driven dog wanting to just frolic in the decoys, unless this is, so I think I'm getting a little off topic. Make sure I come back to this because I'm having a little bit of a squirrel moment. But last night when you and I were doing chores at 9 o'clock at night, we were laughing about Oakley playing with water.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Have you spent much time around a Nova Scotia duck toter?
That's the first time.
You know what? That's what they're bred to do.
You said that to me, and I mentioned that to Zach this morning.
Yeah.
That thing loves to do that.
The way that I understand the history around this breed is that they were made to play in the water.
Oh, yeah.
And attract ducks because of the water and the movement.
And I'm learning a lot about it. It's pretty cool.
Oh, it's really neat. But like, I think that it's awesome when you get an owner that understands what that breed is and understands they're not getting a Labrador Retriever that looks cute and fluffy, right? Because they're not that, but they are very playful, and they are very, their energy is very different. Their personality is very different. Like I bet I personally rinse out his water dish twice a day. Because every time I go by, it's dirty. Because he's sitting there playing in it. And then we're spraying out where I was going with this. You guys, that Eric was spraying out the kennel run next to him.
It's part of my day. I always do it now for fun.
Yeah, and you're like sitting there like playing with the water. Yeah, that's spraying around. It is really funny. But okay, if we're dealing with a breed like that, that's that breed, right? Like I wouldn't be hammering on that dog for being who they were bred to be, right? Again, puppy, one thing, but if you are going to make those corrections, you need to make sure that the dog is going to understand what it is you're asking. And here's why. Let's say the dog's goofing around with the decoys, and you're like, I've had enough of this around my buddies. This is embarrassing. And you're going to go on the collar and light that dog up. Could you create an avoidance issue now towards decoys? Right? Like if that dog is looking at it, all of a sudden, boom, hot, jumps back going, gosh, I don't know what that decoy just did to me, but I didn't like it. I'm going to go back to dad because I feel safe there. Boom, goes back. Well, now all of a sudden, you drop a bird in the decoys and he wants to skirt the edge of the decoys, is nervous and apprehensive about getting in the decoys. You created that issue then. So you really need to understand, if everything that you correct or try to correct there can have a repercussion on the other side of it if you don't do it correctly. And so without knowing the situation, it's a little more difficult to like deep dive into it. But that's what I will say is that like you really got to be sure that when you're communicating, especially in a high intensity level, whether that's vocally, whether that is on the collar, I sure hope not physically, but there are people out there that are going to go to that. That is where, to me, the dog needs to understand what it is you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, you have to accept the consequence that could be on the other side of that. Did that answer that question at all?
It did. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and we can go more here when we get off because it will stay live. But I got a question for you about dog collars. I have some people that will not hit a dog collar when it's in the water on the e-collar. Yeah. What's your philosophy on that?
Well, the collar, from everything that so I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
Disclaimer. I like to put that out there.
Okay.
So nobody misreads that. What I've been told by the engineers that make these products is that the water is not supposed to amplify or make the dog feel it any different. Now, I do think some dogs do feel it different, but the one thing we have to keep in mind is that with these collars, there is no electricity. Everybody calls it electric. Everybody calls it electricity. Everybody calls it zap. It's not electricity. Like you're not like throwing a toaster, in with the dog as it's in the water. Like you don't have to worry about that. It is a static correction. It's like rubbing your feet on the carpet and shocking yourself. Like it's not electric. It's not electricity, is what I'm saying. So you're not going to electrocute the dog. It's not going to be this high voltage. It's not going to be. I think on the flip side of that, though, what I've been told by the same exact people is that there's a lot of factors of how a dog feels the static stimulation. How hydrated your dog is or dehydrated can have an effect on how the dog feels it. The humidity in the air can have an effect on how the dog feels it. The apparently being around like telephone wires can just play with the frequency to where it plays. So like I'm not saying if your dog's in the water that you may not have to change the levels you currently or you normally work on due to that situational change, because as much as I'm told on one side it doesn't change, on the other side you're telling me that there's a lot of factors that change it. So but you shouldn't have this like there shouldn't be a fear of I'm gonna overcorrect my dog because he's in the water and it's gonna be like through the roof. It's not that. I do understand the skepticism, but it's not that. It's not supposed to be that. Coming from a non-engineer that did not make the product.
One more question here, at least. Jamie, and by the way, Jamie and Nate, thank you last night for bringing food in for our strike team.
That was just fantastic.
That was awesome. We had chili, spicy chili. I think what was the other one? Pheasant?
Yeah, pheasant chili. Yeah. Well, it's not every day you get the chef for the Vikings to come in and
when the
make
chef
you guys a meal.
Minnesota Vikings, thank you. See, I keep bringing them over to this side.
There's a reason that there's not been the Jaguars discussed on this podcast this year. Golly.
Maybe that's why you're a little crabby this morning. I was going to bring that up in our meeting.
That's why I've been crabby since September.
Yeah. Question, we know Rhett, okay? Boykin, Spaniel.
He's not a boy. I call him a boykin every time.
Yeah. He's non.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
the non one, but
he's a water spaniel.
And they have two of those, but the water spaniel.
Yeah.
In training, completes retrieves to hand with bumpers and dead birds. In our last live hunt with him, he would find the bird down, but then would get distracted and not complete the retrieve to hand. Either other bird got up. Another gunshot distracted him. Not sure what we should enforce with the collar. Love to hear your thoughts, she says, on that one.
Yeah, obviously, Jamie, we can talk more in detail about this, but from a conversational standpoint on the podcast, let's dig into this a little bit. So, again, I think this is where upland hunting, again, I just think is a little more uncontrolled. Like, from a waterfall standpoint, I just think you have your volley, boom, boom, boom. And then the way that we always operate, and we talk about this before the hunt, is once the shots are done and we have this, hey, we're safe, we're clear, there is no more shooting until the dogs are back in the blind. We're not going to take a risk. We're not going to have the one guy in the middle of the blind that doesn't have a dog, doesn't care, come up and shoot over a dog because one of the birds spun back around. We're not doing that. Even if you deem it to be an overly safe shot, we are not shooting when the dogs are out in the decoys. Okay, we have that discussion. So I feel like it's more under control to where the dogs don't have those other distractions to, because you could have a dog that is very, very trained as far as like not switching, right? Especially as you kind of go towards running tests. And as I look at like the non-switching part, well, if all of a sudden there's on your way back with a bird, another bird is going to flush right here. Now it's boom. It's very tempting for a dog not to switch in that case, right? Because now all of a sudden they go into flush and chase mode. They're naturally going to drop that bird. Now they're distracted on the other one. I understand the training that we do says don't do that. But again, from a hunting standpoint, a live standpoint, it's just going to be that much more distracting. So it's, and again, an upland standpoint, it's a little different, right? Like guys on the left side of the line, if the dog's going to retrieve and all of a sudden a bird on the right end flushes, like that guy on the right end is probably going to shoot, right? It's a very different environment. To me, this is where the on-the-fly training comes in of, all right, we're going to make you do this, right? So if we know that through training and through practice that you should be retrieving every bird to hand, we're going to stop. We're going to make you do that, right? Because if we give you an inch here, especially knowing this dog, you give him an inch, he's going to take a mile. I hope you're laughing at that, Jamie, because like I think we all know it. And I love Rhett, but he's like, and I would say most of the dogs that I really love, they are like that. You give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. So knowing that, it's just even more important to hit pause so that this little snowball doesn't turn into a boulder and just running down, the hill uncontrollably. So the in the field pause train, I think, is very important in that case.
All right, let me take a look one more here.
Would you agree?
That's about it. I agree 100% on that. I mean, it's in the field training. I mean, you just got to learn from the mistakes and keep moving. And she says, I'm laughing. Thanks for the answering on that one. I think that's all our questions. I had two things. I want to give a shout out my buddy Brandon. His son's 4th grade, Abel. Congratulations, Abel got his first duck. And to see a young kid do that,
that's cool.
It is so cool for Dad, Mike, as you know, Grandpa. It was just a really cool moment as we get these youth together. So congratulations, Abel. I know you took 2 days off of school. At the school, where my brother's the principal, by the way. So I kept threatening him on that. Congratulations to him. And then for you, young man, congratulations for all the hard work on your rodeo.
Oh, thank you.
For making the finals here. So I know this is a really big deal for you.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's one of those things that, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
It really is a big deal for me. And the reason it's a big deal is like from a professional side, the dogs are my life. And anytime that I'm doing anything with the dogs, it is work, right? Like even these hunts, like all these hunts, they really are work. And so it's been really fun for me to have something that I can pour myself into as a hobby. And, man, like this year, just nothing went right for me, I thought, right? Like I have my first real significant injury, followed by another one. Well, it was my first real significant injury. I just get over that. And then my really good horse, I almost lose him because of an injury that was misdiagnosed. And so he's another 6 months before I can even think about riding him again. And then I get a new horse to kind of fill in for this time being, and I'm trying to learn the new horse, learn him. Meanwhile, these rodeos are not going as smoothly as I'd like them to, from a competition standpoint. And then I hurt myself, not as bad, but again, it was just like all the stuff stacked up, and it made me change perspectives. And I think this, from a dog standpoint, from a handler standpoint, this might be interesting. I went from, with Hurricane, like I'm going out to win. Like I want to win. I know that we're capable of winning. I know we're the right team. I know we got everything going. Like I want to go win. And I had to change that perspective because the injury forced my hand to. Like either I stop, like I already missed a month. Like either I just miss another month or 2 months, whatever it is, or I ease back into this thing. But I'm basically running on one leg. Right? So like either I go slow things down and just get my times and try to be in a position where I can get a couple points, or I don't do it. And so it forced me to change my perspective, and in forcing me to change my perspective, it made me appreciate things differently. Like, I wasn't out there just to win. Like, I was out there to be like, hey, my tie last time wasn't as good as I wanted to. When I get to that point, I really want to make sure I keep this form and do this. And I really think in the long term, it'll make me better. But I didn't at all think that all those little wins would compound into making the finals at the end of the day. Now, I was the last slot to make it to finals, you know, so like I barely snuck in.
I saw that.
Yeah, but I'm in. And I think what it just does is it makes you realize that even when things aren't going your way, if you can just keep your head down and stack little wins on top of each other, it's amazing how those little wins can compound into something significant. And, so whether you need to hear that in your life or your work or some other avenue, it was very eye-opening for me, because like I am used to winning, and that's winning. I had this conversation because I was really frustrated in this season. Like I hate losing more than I love winning. I know that's weird to say, but that's like it. When I win, I feel good. Like when I lose, I feel really bad. Right? Like I feel like I never get too high, but like the low can like really suck me down. And so I just hate losing. And so this was, I think, one of those things. It's like, look, you have to accept this. But then through a different lens, a different perspective, it gave me some things. So so thank you. I do appreciate that.
Speaking of winning and losing, my son's playing soccer. So I'm the only one that's played. I cannot stand when there's a tie at the end of these games. It drives me nuts. Either go home a winner or a loser. I don't care what end you're on.
Go learn from losing.
So there's no learning in a tie. But from an outside looking in for you, it's an appreciation to see the time you put in, because it's a hobby. And we all have hobbies. And I think a lot of us, men and women, have hobbies, and we don't get to do those when we have kids and get married, and you need a supporting cast, and you're trying to be a husband and a father, and you're a sports background, and this is your competitive nature, and you got trying to run a business. So I've seen this play out, so I know it's a big deal for you, just because it's your time you've put in, all the failures, and driving all this way for your one run. It's just crazy to me. You think you drive 4 hours for your 3-second, 10-second run and go home.
Yeah,
so congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. So thank you for everybody. Okay. So Sarah, I know your Facebook's messed up. Would love to see some of the runs you got there, Rika. So first off, Sarah, thank you for the finals. Congratulations. I really like that. Facebook.
Okay? This is why, yeah.
My Facebook has been hacked since August. So some clown that probably lives in his mom's basement had nothing better to do than hack my Facebook account, which irritates the heck out of me. On one hand, I will say it's been refreshing not having it. It's been kind of nice. Like it's like one less thing that I log into. It was actually scary for about the first week how apparently I had this like subconscious thing where I'd go on my phone and I immediately, I didn't realize this until I lost Facebook. I go to my emails, check my emails, do this, go into Instagram, check my messages, go there, and then like I kept clicking Facebook subconsciously. And then I couldn't get into it. And I was like that's it. To me, it was scary. Like how it was just so routine. But I haven't had it since I think it was August. And so we were in, North Dakota. Oh, I had to sneeze so bad right there for a second. We were in North Dakota, and I took a little nap, probably 30 minutes. I woke up to 152 text messages that were about the Taylor Swift tickets that I had online. Like, so first off, apparently I could sell Taylor Swift tickets like a mofo. So, maybe I need to get into that business, but so whoever has hacked this account now it irritated me, because now it's frustrating. Like, you could actually be swindling some of the people that are friends of mine. Okay, so it really pissed me off. So I've been trying to work with Facebook. Like, Facebook is such a pain to work with. Like, they will not help me. So one, I can't get anyone to actually talk to. So I'm on Facebook, and they have like, did you get hacked? Or like facebook.com/hack. Well, you go in there and there's like a series of questions. Well, for me, I'd go through the series of questions, and on the last one, I'd just bring them back to the first question. Like, it wouldn't actually help me. So I had somebody contact me and tell me that if I went into Instagram, because I still have my Instagram account, and I get verified, okay, so I had to go through the verification deal. So now I have that little blue dot that I know everybody makes fun of because like, oh, like you have to feel special about yourself to have the blue badge or whatever. But I did that just so I could talk to someone, and it worked. Like, I actually got to talk with someone about this.
Okay.
Now, I'm sure he got fed up with it because, like, we were going through all this stuff, and he was helping me, and finally he's just like, oh, nothing more I can do, and, like, he was gone. And so I told who told me to do this, and they're like, yeah, I think he said they get paid based on how many resolutions they get. And so he's like, just try again. So, but at least now, so if anybody gets hacked or doesn't, or it has an issue like this, apparently getting verified on Instagram gets you meta support to where you can actually talk to a person. But apparently you have to do that. So anyway, complete pain.
You live in Columbus, Ohio, by the way, if you look at the profile.
Yeah, apparently I live in Columbus, Ohio. Apparently I was trying to sell
you were selling
a Honda Accord.
Oh, you had so many things for sale. It was awesome deals.
Yeah. My mom sends me a text message. She's like, you're saying something happened to Dad? And like, because apparently it was like something like Dad died. I'm selling my, like, Mom, like, come on. Like, ugh. I don't know. Anyway, fun times. I would love to just throttle the person that did this. Like, you have nothing better to do. You have nothing better to do in your life.
I just think you're wondering what the heck's going on. You did take that nap to 150 some texts.
I woke up and I was like, what in the world is going on? I honestly, I thought somebody died.
Yeah.
That was my first thought, was like, something significant happened, Now, I don't know why. No. Afterwards, I'm like, well, why would 152 people know that? But there were some people that were like, I will buy those tickets right now. Don't sell them to anybody else. I'm like, I have no freaking idea what you're talking about.
Well, you're a high-profile guy, and this happens. If it's not going to happen to me.
Right. Right.
Not going to happen
to
me.
Give me a break. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend as we head into the weekend here. If you guys are going out on a hunt, I would highly suggest just take this in. Hopefully there's some nugget here that you can apply to go make this hunt this weekend even more successful, even if it's an advanced dog, which we didn't even talk about. But we're an hour and 40-some minutes into this thing, and I have 10 minutes before I have a Zoom call, so I do need to get off. So anyways, hope you guys have a great weekend, a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, Eric.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.